us. Today, we already had some excitement, and it's going to be even more because we have, today is all about unexpected mediums. And the cardinal tried to fly off the wall. Unexpected jumping mediums and unsuspecting artists. So it's always fun because we do say that in the hands of an artist, anything can become a creative medium. And these 3 plus 4, because we're not making Brad come up here, he's back there. But they really have taken that creativity to a new level. So we're excited to introduce them. And right next to me for the first time in the show, first time on the panel, is Brit Hansen.
Yeah!
And she does amazing paint carving. So you're going to hear more about that. And then right here, extraordinarily wonderful Sundie Ruppert and her husband Brad, who's the heavy lifter. And then we have Doug Fountain with his amazing gourds and feathers and beautiful structure. So it'll be interesting to hear from these guys about what inspires them to use the mediums they do. And I didn't even introduce where you're from, so I'm going to start with you and have you go down the line, say where you're from and how long you've been an artist.
So I am from northern Arizona. I'm an Arizona native. I went to ASU, lived in Arizona my whole life. I now live in northern, a tiny little town called Joseph City. I've been an artist for 12 years. I have 2 kids, a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. And they're a lot of fun. Keep me busy.
All right. I'm Sundie Ruppert. I'm one half of Sculptural Felt. We're from Des Moines, basically, Des Moines, Iowa. We live south of Norwalk, but Des Moines. And we have been artists our entire lives, I believe. We came from corporate America. We were both art directors and graphic designers for 20 years, and we have been found object sculptors for 25.
I'm Doug Fountain. I've been a full-time artist for 28 years. I live in Fort Lauderdale, Colorado, and now I guess Arizona during the winter. And
could you talk louder, please?
Okay, everybody needs to talk closely into the mic like it's an ice cream cone. This one's not behaving. And so our technical director, Doug, will fix that. So yes, we will talk louder, we will talk right into the microphone so everybody can hear. They get sometimes excited and start using their hands when they talk, and then the microphone flips away from them. So I think we'll stay with Doug because you have a microphone that works. So tell us what made you decide to incorporate gourds and all these beautiful feathers in your work, and how that's really shaped your career.
well, I was in corporate America too as well, and kind of got burnt out on it, and I was in Santa Fe with friends drinking margaritas. And I actually, you know, my mom's Native American, and I've always been drawn to that. And I just was looking at all the stuff in Santa Fe thinking, my God, I could do this. When saying that, I meant I could have an art gallery. So went back to Colorado, opened up an art gallery, started playing around with gourds, had an uncle in the East who had a gourd farm, and I said, you know what, I want to buy these from you. So I took them back, and I started playing around with them, and just goofing off, painting, doing all kinds of crazy things. And before I know it, I had sales reps coming into my gallery to sell me artwork, and the next thing I know, I had 6 sales reps selling my artwork all over the country. So I sold the gallery, and I've always been, as an architect, I was very drawn to texture. I'm very symmetrical, and I have always tried to take my work in that direction. So it has a very architectural feel, very conventional. There's a lot of spiritual elements in it from my heritage, and I've always been I love things to look different than what I've seen other people do. So I've always tried to go beyond that with what I do. So I hope it works, that you see that.
Very good. Wow, that's a great story about how it all started over a margarita and a gourd farm. It worked out well. It's worked out well for you. I like that. Well, I know we're going to have some questions about your feathers. you have extraordinary color combinations. I love that you brought some of your neutrals, but you also will find very vibrant color combinations, some with the paint, some with the feather. So what drives you in deciding what goes together?
Well, I'm kind of blown away at how Mother Nature, I mean, when you look at my feathers, I mean, I really do, there are 1,100 different birds that I work with from the aviaries. First of all, my feathers are from bird aviary in Florida, a huge aviary. And so they're the fallen feathers off the birds raised from breeding. And I'm just so blown away, even after 28 years, the colors that Mother Nature has. Everything is totally natural. So that's why I chose the one that's a little more subtle, to show you just how vibrant the feathers are in the piece and the colors. And once again, it's just layers of texture on top of texture with my work.
Love it. That's what makes it so interesting. Okay, so Sundie, tell us the history of how you and Brad fell into this sculptural felt world.
Well, if you've been in our booth, you've probably heard this from me, but I will repeat it for all of you. So we've been found object sculptors for 25 years. For 15 years, we did a body of work where we collected vintage objects that had great patina and character, that Mother Nature and Father Time, which I agree, Mother Nature is the best artist. What that does to, like if you see the Native American piece in our booth, the background is a vintage bistro table with an umbrella in the middle of it, and we would just look for all these amazing qualities and texture and colors in old metals and wood and everything. And then we did shows in Texas for 20 years, and it was this big antique show, so we would go down there and buy materials and then make them into art and come back 6 months later. And then we were finding it harder and harder to find those things. And I blame DIY television.
I was going to say that show.
And chalkboard paint. Chalkboard paint. Because they were telling everybody to take all the cool things and cover it, and that left us with very slim pickings. So we were looking for something different to do, and very serendipitously, we also do hand-carved signage, and we did a sign for Greeley Hat Works in Colorado. And when we installed the sign, we asked for a tour to see how hats were made, because we wear hats, we love them. How do you make hats? And on the tour, Brad found these. And he picked them up and he asked them what they did with them. And I proceeded to look at him like he was a crazy person, because I was like, we work with wood and metal, and there's nothing here. Was my first thing.
It's a circle.
It's a circle, an outline of a circle. And then I also reminded him that he is married to someone who doesn't even like to sew on a button. So I have no idea where he's planning on going with textiles. And he was like, just let me take a bag of it home and see what I can come up with. And so he started playing around, and 10 years later, here we are.
And I have to tell you, those bags of felt are heavy.
They are very heavy.
Yeah.
Yes, as the Cardinal just represented.
And he's also on a wood plywood or something.
Yeah, yeah.
So what was the first thing that you made with this, and how did you evolve into, we have a painted background that kind of sets the story, we have the felt work, how does that all work together?
So our process is I do all the original drawings and the color palettes, and then I hand those drawings off to Brad. We both work on every single piece, but we have very separate jobs. So I hand them off to Brad, and he creates the wood subsculpture that gives all the wonderful volume to the pieces. And then he starts cutting the felt and nailing it in, and he nails it in like shingling a house. So it all goes toward the face, and I create the face parts out of layers of metal. And I paint it in multiple layers so it has the same interest and integrity that the felt does, but it has two jobs. One, to provide detail that we can't get with the felt, and two, to cover up the last row of nails is the physical purpose. And then when we first started, the very first piece Brad did was this very simple crow, where he just like took this, cut zigzags, wrapped it around this piece of wood that he cut out, and we were like, And then he did a really simple feather, and we were like, maybe. And then we did this rooster. And the rooster had all, it was like a bust, like this is, but it was kind of a side view. And it had all this motion in the feathers. And when he asked me how I could cover up the last row of nails, and they came up with this metal technique, we were like, we're on to something. And it's just, we just keep pushing the envelope to, we curl it, we straighten it, it's, felted fur is the oldest textile still in use today. And it's the only textile that you cannot tear in a straight line because it's not made on a loom. And it's just an amazing material to work with because it's made to be shaped and hold its shape because it's like fuzzy cardboard. And it does what we want it to do.
I've never heard it described as fuzzy cardboard, but you're right. It holds its shape, and it, hats have been around for
a gazillion years.
They protect us. They keep us shaded.
When people say all the time, well, how does it stay in the curls? And I'm always like, cowboys' hats do not collapse as they're going across the range,
or when they get wet, or
right. Yeah.
Okay, well, I love that. And this cardinal is fabulous, by the way. It's your second cardinal you've done?
Second. The first one's owner is right over there.
First one lives over here with our friend. Yep. A lifetime cardinal fan, as in St. Louis Cardinals. So okay, we'll have more questions for you. And then this year I got an application that I was so intrigued with. I was like, what is carved painting? And so I, sometimes I might be in a hurry, but I dove a little deeper. I'm like, wow, this is a woman who, we started off doing
block printing.
Block printing, which I also love. And so this is almost the opposite of that, but how many layers of paint, and how do you do it, and what do you do with your shavings?
So that's the number one question, right? So I layer anywhere from 40 to 100 coats of acrylic onto a wood panel. So first I have to do a full sketch of my design, what I want to do, all the colors, what order they're going to go in, what thickness each color needs to be, depending on what texture I'm going to give it. So really, it's a ton of planning for each piece before I even get to the carving part. I was a block printer before, like you mentioned, but I didn't like the printing part. I just love carving. So that got me experimenting with carving all sorts of things and trying out like wax and clay and wood. And so I was carving wood for a while and painting it back in, which is what a lot of people assume it is when you first see it. But the problem with that was that I don't also love painting. So it felt like twice the process. I would go through and carve a wood panel and then have to start all over again painting it. So that's what got me thinking, well, if I could just carve paint, then it'd be done. And started experimenting and got it to work.
How long did that take, and what, like literally, did you think, okay, I'll just do thick layers and give myself room to dig down? Okay.
Yeah, it took me about a year to find the right paint that I liked, the right consistency. And at first it was just like, okay, one color, now two colors. Now what if I had three, it just kept going and going. Now I do anywhere upwards of 12 colors. And that's when I get up to like 100 coats of paint and it gets pretty thick. And then I use all wood carving tools, just palm tools, veiners, and gouges, carve it down. But yeah, before I was working as a photographer, and when I was pregnant with my daughter, I was put on bed rest. And so I had a creative job as a photographer, but block printing was my creative escape from my creative job. And I didn't really feel like I had a voice with it, but it was my, my time. And then when I was put on bed rest with my daughter, I couldn't photograph. So that's when I really started sketching and taking my block printing more seriously, and then it just evolved pretty quickly.
Isn't that fascinating? Yeah. So it's almost like reverse engineering. So you start from the bottom, choosing the colors, and work up to the top. And how do you keep track of that? And how do you know the depth of each color?
So I have like a crazy notebook. I do a full sketch of a piece, and then I start thinking through, okay, I know what texture I want to give it, so I know what tool I want to use. Well, when I give that texture, then maybe for that color I need 15 coats, just from practice. So it's just been a lot of trial and error of knowing. And once in a while I get it wrong, you know, the paint ends up being a little bit thinner than I thought it was going to be, and then there's some mistakes I can fix and some I can't. And like a little bit to, you know, showing the next color down, okay, I can touch that up a little. But the worst thing that can happen is if I'm not in the right mindset to carve and I accidentally slip, and I love my negative space in my pieces, as you can see. And the last thing I want to do is slip and carve somewhere into the negative space, because I've spent so much time on my design, and it takes 4 to 6 weeks to layer a panel. So just every single day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, I go through and put a coat of paint on all the panels that I'm designing, and do that for a month plus. And so slipping and ruining a panel is pretty heartbreaking. I don't want to do that.
That exactly explains why, I will just tell you right now, artists don't love the question, how long does it take?
Yeah.
Just a heads up. I know it's forever. 59 years is how we got here. But how do you calculate when you're working on multiple pieces? You don't. It's the same thing we do. You're staining multiple things. You're carving multiple things. Whatever. You're working on multiple things at one time. For us, they go back and forth between the two of us. Time is not a big thing for creative people. When it's done, it's done.
Yeah, the San Pedro cactus piece that I have in my booth, the really big centerpiece, that piece I spent weeks just staring at the design, thinking, and the drawing, and thinking, okay, I love this, how am I actually going to do it? How am I really going to make it? And thinking through how it was going to look, you know, by sculpting the paint, how the shadows were going to hit, and what should be, you know, forward, what should go back. So when you get asked, how long did it take to carve? Well, the carving took this long, but there's so much else that goes into it.
Do you once you have the top layer of the paint, do you then sketch onto the paint that you sketched on your sketchbook?
Yes. So after I just, like, this one on the top, it just looks all that orange color. That's it, the terracotta. And so then I'll just sketch the design on the top, really simple. And then just start digging into it and kind of excavating the colors down in and sculpting the paint away.
So cool. Okay, what kind of paint do you use?
Acrylic. No, my own mix of crazy acrylic.
So, and you didn't bring one of your tools, but the other question that is most asked, I mean, y'all have, did you pick up all your feathers? How do you do that? We're all curious, what do you do with the carving pieces?
Oh,
They're
right,
so pretty.
the pieces. Yeah. Sorry, number one question, I forgot it. So I create a ton of paint chips and scraps, and I save all of them. So I have bags and bags of paint chips in my studio, and I give them away to other artists. I love to see what they turn into. I've seen them turned into jewelry and go into paintings and in resin and all sorts of things. And they're, you know, one little slice can be a different shape with, you know, whole stripes of colors in it. And so if you come to my space, I have in my easel, I just pile them up in there until the easel's full, and then I fill up a bag and put it away. And I've given some to Robin, my neighbor. I'm really excited to see what she does with them. Sally took some. She was going to make a jewelry piece out of them. So yeah, that's number one thing that everyone says, you have to do something with these. Well, to me, it's just a byproduct. I love carving. That's something that I'm happy to see what someone else can do with it.
Yeah, I mean, look what happened to felt.
Yeah, right?
So, I love that, paying it forward. So again, you guys each have something so intriguing, and you love carving, you love building, you love texture, and you each made that such a beautiful representation of who you are. And I know you've had some great stories about clients who purchase from you and what the things mean to them. And I've seen your work in a lot of different types of homes, from contemporary to more traditional Western or Native American. I think that's really unique that you can have that range with your style of work. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I work real hard because I want it to cross over. I've seen it in Asian style homes. I've seen it a lot in New England. I mean, there's a lot in Europe. So I think that's the one thing that my work does, because it has a feeling where it does cross over. The mask itself has a Southwestern native feel, but I mean, I think adding the other textures to it that I do with the Venetian plaster that I do and the different layers, it opens up new possibilities for where you can hang my pieces. It's amazing how much you see in New York, because it can be, the totems could be very primitive, but at the same time they still have a very contemporary feel to them. So I always love that feeling of things looking old but still modern. So it's kind of a look that I always like, whether it's colorful or natural.
And the gourd behind you, the mask, can you talk about the symbolism in the design?
Okay, the symbolism in my masks are things that I got from my heritage. My mom her whole family was from the Spirit Lake Sioux tribe in North Dakota. So when you see my mask, on the face of the mask, you see all the dots in between the paint that you see on there. And every dot represents a prayer of thankfulness and gratitude. So those are things I want to get back and put into my work. The triangle of the eye that you see represents unity, the rectangle of the eye, family, and the circle of the mouth, happiness. So that's all wonderful energy that goes into my pieces. So, for me, it's a real important part to pass my heritage on. And if you wanted to be a little more technical with my heritage, I'm actually doing things that really is to the T with it on how it started. The gourd is from the earth. The feathers are all from the aviaries, so they are the fallen feathers off the birds raised for breeding. And the texture backdrops that you see, it started out in 1991 after Hurricane Andrew. My dad's a builder in Florida, and I just saw miles. I clocked it on my car. It was a 10-mile long dump in Miami. And then I got to my dad's, one of his warehouses, and he had all this. They did a material called dry fit, which is a synthetic material that they put on the outside of homes, which is beautiful for insulation and keeps cold, heat in. It's great for that. But the byproduct of the leftover, it's a dense foam. It's absolutely toxic to the environment. So I was in this warehouse and he had all this foam left over. What do you do with this? He's like, we're just throwing it away. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So I'm like, I got to design stuff. So believe it or not, I used up all those 2 warehouses. And today, what I do is I create these on a 3D printer. And then I wrap them with fiberglass tape, do a scratch coat of plaster, and then I do a textured layered Venetian where most Venetian is real shiny. Well, I use plaster color and wax with a trowel, a palette knife, and a putty knife to get that effect. So I did, in a sense, it really started out with the elements of my heritage because I used everything up that we had. And now, of course, that's, quite a few years back. So now I have to create new to keep that going. But there's no waste.
I love that. You guys are all so environmentally conscious. It's great. And also, we don't get to see you work here a lot because what you do is quite messy. So that's the downside to some of the mediums we have here. We can't really have them doing it here, but I love how you explain that. And the 3D printing is sort of fascinating to me as well. How does that work?
Well, it's all done. It's not just for mine. It's also for my dad and brother's businesses where they do that. So it's all done. I sketch a size of what I want. So I'll do a custom size, and it goes into the computer, and the printer prints it out. And it's big. It's as big as this whole room. So, and I can do different sizes and shapes of whatever I want with a piece with that. So.
Not everybody has access to that.
No, it's
so
millions
cool.
to get. So it is something really rare. Yeah.
I would like a 3D printer. They're 3D printing homes now, so it's pretty.
You can do that with this 3D printer.
Yeah. Technology advancing humanity, so that's great. But I love that you incorporated it into the world of art and something that we can all enjoy. So, Miss Sundie, you have done so many different animals, and you guys are also very creative in how you name things. What are some of your favorite pieces you've done? And of course, you do your more of your, I won't call this abstract, but more of your serene. You do have abstract contemporary pieces, but this is beautiful. You've used the bright colors. How do you get the color, by the way? Because there's no color in that felt. And then what inspires it?
The color, for the most part. So for the first 3 years, because the hat maker, Really Hat Works in Colorado, if you ever want a custom-made hat, I'll give you a card. But they have, obviously, mostly neutrals. And then we've been getting the felt there for 10 years, and in the last 5, because they happen to be the supplier for all things Yellowstone and Taylor Sheridan, the last 5 years our supplies have gone up dramatically. For the first 3 years, we did everything neutral. Wolves, bears, bison, horses, dogs, squirrels, cats, everything, because it was like, it just said fur to me. So that's where we started. And then it took me 3 years to figure out how to dye it. And once I figured that out, which is basically painting on diluted house paint, which gives me a color deck, so I don't have to formulate all the colors, which is what I was doing for the first 2 years, and that was a nightmare. This piece right here is actually kind of an outlier. I don't know if y'all remember last year on our outside wall of our booth, we did a collaboration piece with a group out of Albuquerque named Submaterial, and they specialize in walls, felt walls for sound dampening. And the sound dampening has become a really wonderful feature of our work that we did not realize was a thing, which I will finish up in just a second. But so they have all this wonderful palette of all these brighter colors. And on reds in particular, we can't dye the felt, those really nice bright reds. So after doing that wall, we asked them if we could buy some scraps from them. And so this has got some wool in it because they do use wool felt, and then some of it is like the pinks or felt fur and the blacks and everything, or the normal felt that we use. The sound dampening has just been a gift that 2 clients that walked in here said, we're hoping that you can help us with a problem. And they had remodeled their Biltmore area home into a large open floor plan. And they were working with an architect who was going to create felt art for them to dampen the echo. And she fell ill and couldn't finish the project. So they walked in here, and I felt like a cartoon character standing in the middle of our studio with a light bulb going off over my head, like, oh, our work is functional and helpful. And the more research I do into the amount of sound, noise pollution in our lives, it's so important. And we're not going to take away all of the echo, but it dampens it. It takes the higher pitch out of the air. I can tell people, you can stand in our studio and we can have a very nice conversation at a normal sound, and you walk outside of our booth and you hear all of that sound up here. One of my favorite stories to tell is the effect that it has had on people in the autism spectrum that are neurodivergent. We have several clients between like pet therapy, and we do encourage you petting your artwork all day long once you get it home. you don't have vet bills with these, but you can still pet them. But the fact that the sound, there's a lot of research that needs to go into this, and the client that has one piece that's about this size, but it's a heart, she told me that her 20-something nonverbal son, who wears noise-canceling headphones, no longer wears his noise-canceling headphones at home. Every time I tell this story, I get choked up because it means so much to me. But she's like, I can't make any claims because he can't tell me, but what I assume is that it's taking away the frequency that irritates him. So when he's at home now, he doesn't have to wear those headphones, only when he leaves the house. And that has incentivized us to try and figure out a way to create something we're trying to get funding for, to create like these mobile sensory dens where when you have a big event, you know, golf tournament, Tempe Art Festival, these families cannot have a social life because of the children that are get so overstimulated so easily. And if we could provide a way, a respite for them to go and, you know, calm down, have you know, other people's art that's just calm and the lighting is right and the music and the, you know, just a place to go and get a hold of yourselves. That is a really big dream of ours that I'm working on.
Wonderful. And by the way, our Art Connection magazine, if you don't already have one of the issues has the story of our collectors that used Brad and Sundie's work to do the sound dampening. And it's great. You can, you know, I was talking about have fun with your art, but your art can also be very functional and serve, you know, great purpose. So
in a very sublime way. But it is functional.
Yeah. And so many ideas come from the artists being here and meeting with collectors. Like you also did the stacked pieces. So yeah, those we're still trying to get the base worked out on, but everybody's very interested in them. We just can't weld. So we know welders.
Yeah. We're trying to get there, but yeah, we've done some 3D pieces, and you know, when they first said it to me, I was like, I know nothing about the science of this, and there is some obvious science to sound, but I've learned a bit. But she was like, it's okay, we have all the spaces figured out, we just need the artwork to put on the spaces. So
you segued from just doing, it started with the nature furry animals that were neutral tones, and then you moved into colors. You told a story one time about you were in Florida and you ran out of...
Yeah.
And
well, we were in Florida and I wanted to do something lower priced. And so that's where that's how I always say, you know, necessity is the mother of invention. But Brad, I said, let's do some small palm trees or something. And Brad's like, did you bring dye? And I was like, no, but there's a Home Depot right over there. And I went and bought the little samples of paint, you know, 3 different colors of green, and we diluted it and started brushing it on, and it was the best. It was way better than any of those formulas of transparent dyes that I was doing at home. And we dye on everything from buckskin to black. And I make, every time we do a new color, I dye on all those colors and then make a color card. And so we get all the wonderful values and shades and tones of these colors when you dye on, you know, cream, white, you know, kind of a sage color, French tan, and black. You get all these wonderful values and shades, and I would have never even tried that with the transparent dyes we were working with because they would have never shown up. But when it's house paint, it works.
House paint on various shades of felt.
Yeah.
Gets all the values and colors.
Yeah.
What inspired you to do more of these neutral and your contemporary pieces, the curly cues?
The curly cues were us trying to do abstract, which is difficult for 2 people to do. abstract is a very personal thing. I can draw a cardinal and give it to Brad and say, now cut that out of wood, and he can see that. He can't see what's going on in my head for abstract, and so far no one's figured out like a USB port to hook us together. So we have to do what I call design abstracts. So the curly things, the bursty things, it's just, you know, the circles, I can draw that. And then as long as Brad can see it, because he has to build it, then we're off to the races. This was actually inspired. So we have two of our big curly Thrive pieces in this Tierra Luna spa at the Biltmore. Yeah. And when we went to install those, we were walking through the Biltmore just looking at all the wonderfulness. And
Frank Lloyd Wright inspired.
Yes. And they had these like plaster neutral tone-on-tone cactuses in this corner on this hallway. And we were like, wow, that's really awesome. We could do something like that. And we had done green cactuses before, and they were fine. But this just kind of like elevated cacti to this whole other level. And there's something about this body of work that's just like a calming, meditative experience. I mean, I watch people walk into our studio and they look around, ooh, cardinal, ooh, fox, you know, and then they turn to this wall and they just go, oh, wow. And I'm like, I feel the same way. When I was working on it, it was just like calming, and it is like a spa. So that's where we went, but we can do green too if you want.
But this is all just the natural remaining felt from the hats. Okay. Very good. Well, that's fabulous. Thank you for all that. I wanted to ask you specifically, everything that I've seen in your work is botanical and hummingbirds. Do you do, I mean, is it all natural beings?
Well, I love nature. I love, since I'm from the desert, I think that it's really interesting that, I would say, so there's people who love the desert and there's people that just don't get it. And I've heard, you know, over my lifetime, people say, oh, the desert's just so dull, and there's no color. And it's so wrong. The desert is so colorful. It's so beautiful to me. And I think that it's fascinating how much beauty can come out of such a harsh environment. So that's what I really love to showcase. So I do a lot of Southwest animals, from horses, hummingbirds, coyotes, anything, rabbits, and lots of botanicals, of course.
And, well, you grew up here, so what about the terrain where you live now? Is that?
So I'm now in high desert. So lots of canyons, red rock. I'm by the petrified forest. So we still have prickly pear, and I love the canyons. That's one thing I've tried carving canyons. I haven't quite figured out carving landscapes to where I like it yet.
Well, something to look forward to. I'm sure that would be fabulous, the canyons, especially with your technique. So, yeah, the colors are so vibrant. Well, the newer one that you just put up, though, that is a little bit more of a neutral.
Yeah, I love to play with both. I love color, but overall I want things to look very peaceful. I always try to balance out bright colors and neutrals and bring in some earth tones, because I want pieces to be happy, serene, peaceful. So those are my favorite words that I hear when people come and see my work.
I think that's always really important to think, what do you want to inspire when people look at it, and then when you hear those words come out of their mouth, it must be very satisfying.
Yes.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about your negative space, because I agree it's really impactful the way you use that, and a lot of people are afraid of that. And maybe it's your woodblock carving background, but
I think negative space for my process is so important, because if I carve the entire surface, then I also lose some of the depth. I really need to show some of like where it started, right? Like how thick the surface is, and then show all the way down into how deep it really goes. So, from pieces like this that are centered to some where I carve off the edges like this, but still to show some nice negative space to have, and then it helps cast shadows too. I love when my pieces are in natural light, and we have so much beautiful sunlight here, and homes with windows, and I want my artwork to be where it can have different lighting and cast different shadows throughout the day.
So cool. You mentioned, I think I heard you say you have 12 colors that
That's
you work.
the most I've done so far, so
Okay.
up to 12.
But 12 colors could also mean 100 layers?
Right, so the colors, anywhere from like 3 colors to 12 colors, but 40 to 100 layers, because each color could get anywhere from 5 coats to 20 coats per color, depending on what texture I want to give that color specifically. So like on this piece, I have some really shallow cuts. I don't need that color to be as thick because the cuts are really shallow. But on a piece that I'm giving a little more textured cut, like a deeper V cut, I need that color to be a lot thicker so that I have enough of it I can catch it, otherwise I would just go right through it onto the next one. So I really have to think through how thick each color has to be so that I can give it the texture and really comes through sculpturally.
I'm just picturing this multitasking. She's making breakfast, lunch, and dinner and throwing some paint and keeping track of how many layers she has there.
Yeah,
So
I have
you know
ADHD.
so you know how far to carve down. Oh my goodness. That's a great visual for me. I love it. At home, do you have a designated workspace that you keep everybody out of, or is it?
So currently, my husband built our home just a few years ago, and he's currently building my studio. So I get to move into my studio after this show for the first time. Yes, so I'm very excited to have my own designated space. For the last now 3-4 years, I've been basically just taking over the entire house.
That's normal.
That's normal. That's an artist for you.
Yeah. No horizontal spaces are off limits.
Something tells me even when she has a studio, there might be some house space in the house as well. What do you love most about what you do, and especially being able to share it with people in face to face?
I love the meditative part of my work, sitting and carving. That's the part when I start, people see my work, it's one of the first things they say to me too. Oh wow, that must be so satisfying. That must, the headspace you must be in, how meditative, zen, and it really is. So I talk a lot about that. I love that when people first see my work, it usually just think it's a painting. From a distance, it looks like a painting. And then as you get closer, you see more and more and more detail, and then you just want to stare at it like this close. And I really love that. I just had a home show last week, and this couple said, okay, it's really important to us that we find a spot for this piece where we can see it up close and from a distance. I thought, oh, you just get me. Thank you.
I love that. Yeah, it's true. It really, you get a whole different dimension the closer you get. So, thank you. What about you, Doug? Like, what do you love most about what you do and sharing it with others?
What I try to do with my work, I love light. I live in places where the light, like you said, is just amazing. So, and today, clients of mine show me one of my pieces, how as the sun came in, and even though it was only maybe briefly, I love to see my pieces in sunlight. Because what I do is I took the walls of my home in Colorado and I did different shadings with color and with the plasters and watched how it reflected over the course of the day. So my work has a very different feeling as the light hits it in the morning, through the day, in the evening. It changes color drastically. And so that's what I wanted to capture. People are talking about, I want my work to be in the sun. It's like you know, we live someplace where we have lots of sun. It's like whether it's Colorado, Florida, Arizona, they're all three great sun places. So I want my work to where you can see that and see just how much my pieces change throughout the day. Not just the Venetian plaster, feathers. It's amazing. If you look at the feathers behind me with the orange tips, they're a tiger tail pheasant, and they have a very black tint to them and a hunter green that's iridescent. So as light hits it, they will sparkle. So it's not just the plaster, but it's also everything. So it all changes. The gourd, the leather, as light changes, the piece looks alive at different stages. So it ever changing. And that's what I love, is like what Brit said. It's like lighting is everything to me. And I like that with texture and dimension, and then I can combine all three, then, you know, that's kind of fun.
How about you, Sundie?
I would say, I mean, all of us, obviously, Doug and I were just saying, we're all constructors. You know, we're not, I mean, everything we do, like, you're adding and then taking away with what you do. With Brad and I always joke, and I always say, you know how they say that you always should do puzzles, you know, to keep your brain sharp? I'm like, I have no need for Sudoku, because basically create a puzzle every single day to, you know, try and get all of those little pieces together, and I pre-drill everything before the felt goes on so that you know where to put it. And every single time, like this lion, and we were finishing up yesterday, I was like, please let all the pieces go back on like they're supposed to go on. I mean, you think it's gonna be right, but especially when two people are working on something and it's going back and forth, and, you know, I don't see a piece for a couple days because Brad's working on it, and then I'm hoping that, you know, everything I did is gonna go back together again. So we have a lot of trust in each other and what we do, and that's why I always say we never do each other's job. We consult with each other and we collaborate with each other, but neither one of us ever goes, let me work on that, you're not doing it right. We will push each other to go, that's not what I'm thinking, you know, try again. And sometimes, you know, that gets a little stressful, like the lion eyes yesterday. But when you work on that and you work together and you end up with this thing at the end that it's like, yeah, that's it. I mean, that is just a wonderful feeling. And then add on to that, this whole sound benefit is just, this is a gift that I never thought I ever needed. And it's changed our lives, literally, in many ways.
That's so great. I love that. I want to make sure we have time for questions from anybody here or online. Yes, please. I'm going to give you this microphone.
I think I need a mic.
Yes.
Thank you, Susan. You're doing a super job. I love the comment.
Yeah.
Congratulations to Susan. Could you do it louder again, please? Please, louder. Oh, you're a great one. Thank you. Well, I have a question for I am privileged to have one of his art in my gallery. And you are an inspiration. You're more than art, if I may say. I think your art is not only, you resonate a psychology, philosophy, happiness, a religion, belief, eternal beauty, and you search for something that is smiling at you and makes you feel good. I'm honored and privileged to have one of your pieces, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. I'm very grateful to be here.
So true. So true. I love that. Yes, over here.
I'm curious, is there anybody else that does what you do?
So Hello? Here.
It's the time that we need to show. Go ahead.
So I have discovered, since doing this, some people who carve paint more abstractly, which is really beautiful. Most of the time it's layers and layers of paint, less planned, and then carved marks into it. So there were definitely times when planning and experimenting with this process, you know, having hiccups, layering the paint too fast and having it crack. I'm very fortunate to live in such a dry climate where I have no idea how this would work if anyone tried to layer paint in somewhere like Louisiana. And I don't know how they would even accomplish it. So my process is very scientific, and there were times when going through experimenting with it that I thought, oh my goodness, this is just crazy. Like, it's not gonna work. And I have made this impossible medium. No one does this for a reason. And then I would find, you know, something where someone carves some marks into a painting, and I'm like, that right there, that's what I want to do. And just kept working at it until finally having a piece work. And you know, there's still times where I'm layering a panel and I'm on code 40, knowing that I'm getting to 80 is what's planned, and I think, why do I do this to myself? But then in the end, when the piece is done, I love it, and it's worth all the work.
Well done.
Thank you. Awesome, thank you. Yes.
I just wondered, do you have any, like, have you made any videos, like time-lapse kind of things that people could watch, or is that something you wouldn't want to put out there maybe because?
No, I love sharing my process. So I have videos on my website, Brit.Hansen.art. I have videos on my social media accounts. Since the process is very unique and a lot of people look at it at face value, can't quite figure out what it is. I love to show the process. Like you said, I do a lot of time lapse.
And you get to watch her live in person right here. Yes. Dang. Okay, you want to pass that?
Where's Sunny's collaborator? Is he here tonight?
Well,
Oh, yeah. I was going to say
he
Brad.
was standing back there in the corner, but I'm thinking, oh wait, where did,
Yeah, Brad.
Brad?
The one thing super
Big
cool
kitty.
about Brad, come on up here, Brad. He has his very own scissor holster.
Oh,
How many
yeah,
of you
we're
have a
supposed to
scissor
bring
holster? Oh,
He's shy.
he's just gonna wave from the back of the Yeah. The thing is, we have to put him out in the parking lot when he does his work because he's very
Noisy and
very
messy.
noisy and messy. So he hangs out in the North 40 in
With
the
our
tent.
3 dogs. He loves it
With
out
the dogs,
there.
yes.
Yeah.
But let's hear it for Brad. Woo-hoo! Big Yeti.
Good question, man.
Are there any other questions? Yes.
I can talk about it. This is for Doug. So I was wondering, with the totems, are you representing everything in the chords that you are, and the shapes with the
Right.
triangles?
And the shapes, yes, as you see that, I consider this my round right here. So that's the happiness. The triangle is unity, and the rectangular bands, that's family. So yes, I do incorporate that in that.
Is that in all of your work?
And most all of them, and some of them I add it. I have to add it because I get clients that want to do custom pieces and a little different. So, but I try to put that in all of my pieces. I'll use some of the elements.
Is that traditional Native American symbol?
Yes, it's tradition from my tribe, which is Spirit Lake, North Dakota, where my mom is from.
Good question. Good question. Yes.
This is just a compliment for you, Cindy.
I love live painting and artwork. I loved it the day I saw it, but I loved it more today than yesterday, but not as much as what I would love it tomorrow.
Oh, thank you. No, that's beautiful.
Very sweet.
And that it was instantaneous for you when you saw that, for sure. So.
I have to tell you just a little story about Mary. Mary walked in here 2 years ago, and we had literally 2 days ago finished a cardinal that was bigger than this one. And she walked in, and she looked at that cardinal, and she started telling me that she's from St. Louis originally, worked for Anheuser-Busch, met her husband while working at Anheuser-Busch, and you can't see it from a distance, but these raffle tickets that are on here, this is what I love about the randomness of life. I turn those tickets over almost every other time. I use those vertically, so it says 5 cents, and you can read that. When I turn those tickets over, on the back side of them, it says St. Louis Carnival Supply Company. And
It's like goosebumps.
I know, right? And then on this one, there's a book page right there, and it says that the title of the chapter is Happy Jack, and somebody told me there's a town in Arizona called Happy Jack, Arizona. So we have accidentally covered both Cardinal fan situations going on. But when Mary walked in, she said, I want to get that piece, and I need it by my anniversary and my 90th birthday. And we made that happen, and it was a pleasure. And Doug installed it for us.
Doug they got to live at our office for a little while, and then Doug went and hung it up and got to spend time with Mary.
I tell your story all the time, Mary.
It's the magic of the celebration, for sure. So that's probably a good place to end, because that was such a good statement, and all of you for sharing, thank you. And I just want to real quick announce, a lot of people have wondered what's going to happen if all this land sells. I just wanted to take a chance to tell all of you, we have a new location, and it's right across the street. And some of you might have gotten letters. We have our sign up. We're going through the use permit process. Monday we have an open house to answer any questions the community might have. But basically we're sliding about 200 yards south. You'll never even know we moved, except we will, because we'll have to do a little bit of work over there. But same view, we're literally just sliding south. So it's very good news, and we've got you know, a good run over there for sure. And I know a lot of you have asked and wondered, so just yippee, hip hip hooray, it's all good. So, we of course welcome any support when it comes time to go to City Council. If we need people to say what the show means to them, we will certainly ask for your feedback and support in that. But just thought it would be a good time to share that, and we'll wrap it up with that. And we'll see you next week for something else spectacular. I don't know what it is, but it'll be great.